Today is Saturday, September 23rd, 2023, and this is the Dunkley Report. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Israel is at the cusp of a historic breakthrough leading to a peace agreement with Saudi Arabia. But he did not outline a clear path for clearing the hurdles facing such a deal. In an address to the UN General Assembly on Friday, Netanyahu said, "Peace between Israel and Saudi Arabia will truly create a new Middle East." The U.S. has been seeking to broker an agreement in which Saudi Arabia would normalize relations with Israel in exchange for a U.S. defense pact, aid in developing a civilian nuclear program, and progress toward creating a Palestinian state. The last would be a hard sell for Netanyahu's far-right government. The U.S. Treasury Department and China's Ministry of Finance have launched a pair of economic working groups in an effort to ease tensions and deepen ties between the nations. The Treasury Department said Friday the working groups will provide channels for frank and substantive discussions on economic policy issues. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen says the working groups will establish a durable channel of communication between the world's two largest economies. The announcement follows a string of high-ranking Biden administration officials' visits to China this year. The visit set the stage for a possible meeting between President Joe Biden and Chinese leader Xi Jinping in November at an Asia-Pacific Economic Conference in San Francisco. A Ukrainian missile struck the headquarters of Russia's Navy in Crimea. The Russian Defense Ministry initially said one service member was killed in the Friday attack, but then issued a statement saying he was missing. Images posted on social media showed plumes of smoke over the Black Sea Fleet headquarters in the city of Sevastopol. Russia said 5 missiles were shot down by its air defense systems responding to the attack. The attack comes a day after Russian missiles and artillery pounded cities across Ukraine, killing at least 5 people. Military experts say it is essential for Ukraine to keep up its attacks on targets in Crimea to degrade Russian morale. Pope Francis has blasted what he calls the fanaticism of indifference that greets migrants seeking a better life in Europe. His comments came as he arrived Friday in the French port of Marseille, amid a new influx of would-be refugees from Africa that has sparked a backlash from some of Europe's increasingly anti-migrant leaders. Francis presided over a silent moment of prayer at a memorial dedicated to sailors and migrants lost at sea, surrounded by Marseille's faith leaders and migrant rescue organizations. The visit was scheduled months ago. It comes as Europe's migrant dilemma is again in headlines, after the Italian island of Lampedusa was overwhelmed last week by nearly 7,000 migrants who arrived in a day. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has urged Canada to stay with his country to victory as he went to the Canadian Parliament, seeking to bolster support from Western allies for Ukraine's war against the Russian invasion. Zelensky flew into Canada's capital late on Thursday after meetings with President Joe Biden and lawmakers in Washington. He spoke at the United Nations annual meeting Wednesday. Zelensky says Canada has always been on the bright side of history in fighting previous wars, and that it's helped save thousands of lives in this war with aid. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced an additional $650 million Canadian, or about $482 million over 3 years, for 50 armored vehicles that will be built in Canada. King Charles III has traveled to the southwestern French city of Bordeaux to focus on climate and the environment. The UK monarch and Queen Camilla met emergency workers and communities affected by wildfires in the Bordeaux region last year. They visited an experimental urban forest and a vineyard known for its sustainable approach to winemaking. The city near the Atlantic is home to a large British community. Friday's events marked the third and last day of a state visit aimed at shoring up the alliance between Britain and France. Animals at a zoo in Rio de Janeiro have been getting cold treats to cool them down during a rare winter heat wave. Black spider monkeys were given fruit-flavored ice pops on Friday at Rio's Bioparque. It's technically still winter in Brazil, with spring due to start in a couple of days. But a heat wave has engulfed the country since the beginning of the week. There have been record temperatures that have made humans and animals alike eagerly greet any chance of cooling down. A government official says that Germany is considering establishing short-term border controls with Poland and the Czech Republic to keep irregular migrants from entering the country. Interior Minister Nancy Faeser told a German newspaper on Friday that setting up temporary police checks at border crossings would help Germany prevent the smuggling and trafficking of people. She added that the increased border checks would need to be combined with the already ongoing random police checks that are being carried out. Germany, Poland, and the Czech Republic belong to the European Union's visa-free zone known as the Schengen area. Bulgaria's government has approved the purchase of U.S.-made Stryker combat vehicles to modernize the country's land forces and bring them in line with NATO standards. The decision was announced Friday by the government's press office. The statement followed the approval by the U.S. State Department of the sale of 183 Stryker vehicles and related gear to Bulgaria for an estimated cost of $1.5 billion. Bulgaria is located on NATO's eastern flank. The country has intensified its military modernization projects by replacing its outdated Soviet-built weapons systems. The president of Yemen's Southern Transitional Council said in an interview that he will prioritize the creation of a separate country in negotiations with their rivals, the Houthi rebels. Idris al-Zubaydi's comments on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly come days after the conclusion of landmark talks in Riyadh between the Houthi rebels and Saudi Arabia, which leads a coalition fighting them in the country's civil war. The remarks signal that his group might not get on board for a solution without inclusion of a separate state's creation. The Transitional Council is an umbrella group of heavily armed and well-financed militias. Today's news was reported by the Associated Press. This has been the World News for Saturday, September 23, 2023. Thanks again for joining us at the Dunkley Report.